wrong for getting upset with my best friend's son for giving my son cake? My son is 8 years old and recently attended his friend's 8th birthday party. This friend is my best friend's son. I don't let my son have any junk food at all, and he usually brings his own snacks to events that have a lot of sugary foods. I don't like judging parents and stuff with like their kids, but their kids, let them have some sugar. My best friend bakes a lot and made a special chocolate cake for her son's birthday. When it comes to my son, I don't let him have cake. This is personal preference for his health, not for any allergy reasons, and he is not diabetic or gluten-free. My son knows he isn't allowed to have cake because of the additives. When he told his best friend this at the party, his friend apparently got upset and told him it was good cake, not bad like I say, because his mom made it and it was his birthday cake. My son ate the cake, got a sugar rush, and crashed, making him cranky for the rest of the day after we left the party. I told my friend she needs to have some kind of consequence for her son to teach him not to peer pressure other children into eating things they're not allowed to have. She said because it wasn't an issue of allergies or health, that she's sorry my son was cranky, but she won't be punishing her son or talking to him about it on his birthday. She also says that she'll just watch more closely and make sure her husband does in the future, as well as have a chat with him on another day about respecting food habits. I love my friend, but historically, her and her husband have always said yes to their son and not given him any consequences for anything. Both of us were present at the party and did not see them sharing the cake. They were outside eating in the backyard with their fathers and some other parents supervising while we cleaned up. Both of us were present at the party and did not see them sharing the cake, so it's not an issue of anyone going behind anyone's back, just teaching children boundaries and respect. I let my son stay for the rest of the party and be with his friends, so it's not like I ruined the day. So, am I for being upset with my friend's son and the fact that she won't punish her son for pressuring my son into eating cake?
My fiance faked being rich just to get me to marry him. Should I leave him? My fiance has lied to me literally over hundreds of times. It all started when he and I met 3 years ago. I was turning 32 and going through a divorce, so I had no intention of ever getting into another relationship. At least not for a long time. I come from a really wealthy family, so I inherited a lot of money when I turned 18. That never stopped me from getting a job. I started working in fashion and it was amazing. Eventually I became a stylist and had my own business. My relationship with my then husband was not going well, so we decided to get a divorce. But my ex-husband and I never really had hard feelings and we stayed friends. At the time I was living in New York and had tons of friends. Every single weekend I was going out. And since I was single, I literally had nobody to answer to. My friends and I would go to exclusive clubs and restaurants every single night. This is how I met my compulsive liar of a fiance. He was friends with somebody in my friend group. Now everyone in my group was pretty wealthy. We all drove expensive cars, owned our own businesses, and we worked really hard. One of my friends introduced me to him, and within the first 5 minutes of our conversation, he told me that he was a Calvin Klein model. Of course I believed it because he was really attractive. And he basically asked me how much money I made a year. And I was honest with him. I earned around 300 grand a year. That's when he told me that he was a millionaire. Follow for part 2. My fiance faked being rich just so that I could marry him. Should I leave him? The very first night I met him, he told me that he was a millionaire and that he was a Calvin Klein model. Of course I believed him because he was just that attractive. Then he asked me how much I earned per year and I told him the truth, $300,000. Look on his face was of utter shock. He told me he almost couldn't believe that I would make that much money. And he started talking about how he's a millionaire and he models and he travels around the world. I was actually impressed. Later that night I asked the friend that introduced me to him if it was all true. She said yeah, he posts about it on his Instagram, so I think so. Went to the bathroom and started looking him up on Instagram. And it looked like it was true. He did model for Calvin Klein and was modeling around the world. But honestly, from his Instagram, I really couldn't gather if he was a millionaire or not. It's not like he was posting pictures of him in a Maybach or anything. That very same night, he asked me if he could come to my apartment and I said no. The very next day, he asked me out on a date and I said yes. Ended up going to a really fancy restaurant and he paid for the bill. When the bill came, it was over $1,000. Ordered so many things off the menu. What I really didn't like was that he barely touched any of the food. The rest of the week, he invited me to all these different restaurants. On our second week, I asked him if he wanted to come to my place to have dinner, which he did. And the look of his face when he showed up to my apartment was like shocked. Finally, he asked me how much my rent was. That's when I told him I didn't pay rent, I owned the apartment. That's when he said, yeah, I own my own place too. And then I asked him, why haven't you invited me to your apartment? He said that he was getting renovations done. Exactly a month into us dating, he asked me to be his girlfriend and I said yes. Oh, I had not been to his apartment at this point. He had been paying for everything. Follow for part 3. Fiance faked being rich to get me to marry him. Should I leave him? At this point, he had been paying for everything. Every single time we went to dinner, any date we ever went on, he paid for everything. About 2 months into our relationship, I asked him again if I could go to his apartment. That's when he made up another excuse. He told me the contractor that was doing all the renovations in his apartment basically bailed on him. So his apartment was basically in shambles. I told him that I actually knew a contractor who could help him out. And he told me not to worry about it, that he had it covered. The very next week, he had prepared an elaborate proposal. He took me to Central Park where he had a band. He gave me a 3-carat pink diamond engagement ring. Of course I said yes, I was so happy. Never thought I'd find love again. After the engagement, I told him that we should just move in together. That's when he said, perfect, I can move into your place next week. I was like, what? He said that he actually wanted to sell his apartment. So I said yes. And the very next week, he moved into my place. When he showed up to my apartment, he literally only had 2 suitcases. And most of the clothes were kind of old and raggedy. I asked him where all of his stuff was, and he said, this is it. That's when I started getting really suspicious. I called his modeling agency, and they told me that they hadn't worked with him in 3 years. So apparently he wasn't really a model. Confronted him and asked him what was going on. He confessed that he hadn't modeled in years. That when he met me, he was so impressed that he needed to tell me something to impress me. He told me he had a lot of credit card debt and that he actually couldn't afford the lifestyle he was showing me. Then he also told me that he never even had an apartment. He was sleeping on his friend's couch. I told him I couldn't marry him or trust him, and that he was probably only after my money. He swears that he loves me. No, he hasn't asked me for money, and he's offering to actually pay for rent. My friends and family think I should leave him, but I love him and I'm so attracted to him. What should I do?
I am a widower. I lost my wife, Anne, 34, just minutes after she gave birth to our first baby, Sammy. She had a difficult pregnancy, so I took indefinite leave 3 months before she was due. Sammy's 4 months old now, and before I went back to work, I told my mother-in-law, Sandra, 56, about my plans and if she can recommend a nanny to take care of my daughter when I work. She offered to do it for free. I told her she's free to come by any time during the day if she feels uncomfortable with a nanny looking after Sammy, but she insisted on doing it herself. So I said yes and gave her a copy of the house keys. She comes 30 minutes before I leave for work, and when I come home, she stays for dinner and leaves after putting Sammy to sleep. Everything was fine for the first couple of weeks until I noticed that Sammy's not feeding as much. Her formula is barely touched. I asked Sandra about it and why Sammy's not feeding well. She said that she's trying to breastfeed my daughter. At first I thought she was joking, then I realized that she wasn't. She said that Sammy needs to latch on for a few minutes every day to activate her milk production. I almost lost it. I told her that she cannot do that and that she needs to stop. She said that she will, but I caught her again when I walked into my daughter's room and she was forcing Sammy to latch. I confronted her and told her that she's no longer my baby's nanny. I didn't ask for the key back, as she's still welcome to my home anytime she wants to visit. I asked for a 1-week leave from work to take care of my daughter and find a nanny. I found one, but after 2 days she never returned. I called her and she said that my mother fired her the day before. I asked her to describe the woman and I was living when I realized it was Sandra. She came into my house using her key and fired my nanny. I was about to call her when she showed up and convoluted the story like how I hired an incompetent nanny, etc, etc. I told her to leave, but she refused and told me that she's calling CPS because I'm endangering my child. We argued back and forth before I called the police and she was charged with trespassing. I know my mother-in-law is grieving the loss of her daughter. I am too. But she crossed the line when she disregarded my wishes. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law are calling me ruthless and I'm now second-guessing myself. Have I taken it too far by calling the police? In-law after she entered my home and fired my babysitter?
I have a real severe insomnia disorder, and so most nights I barely get any sleep. But last night I fell asleep at 6:30 p.m. and today I woke up at 6:30 a.m. and I did not know that it was possible to be this happy for no reason at all. Like, I woke up and I walked past my mirror with dirty hair and no makeup, and I was just like, am I Beyonce? I look amazing today. And then I got in my car and I had no road rage. There was even a guy who slipped into my lane at the very last minute to get onto the highway, and I just let him in. I wasn't even bitter about it. Is this my truest self? Like, are people who sleep at night just genuinely happy all the time? Did sleep cure all my childhood traumas?